We already know that acceleration is the rate at which velocity changes. That means that we are measuring how fast an object actually changes its speed. So we need to know what the change in speed was and how long it took them to make that change. Well, in order to know what the change of speed was, we have to know two things. Where did it start, and what was the speed when it ended? You may have heard people use this idea when referring to sports cars, where they say that the car accelerated from 0 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour in like 2 to 3 seconds. That's pretty fast because it went from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. That means it accelerated at a really fast rate because it could get from nothing, no speed, to a high speed in a short amount of time. When we use that in acceleration problems, it might look something like this. So let's take Henry, who went skydiving and jumped out of an airplane. We're going to imagine that since he was standing still in the airplane before he jumped, that his initial or starting speed was 0 meters per second. Then after he jumped, he fell for a total of 3 seconds, and after 3 seconds, he reached a final speed of 30 meters per second. So that means we know his final speed, his initial speed, and the time it took him to make that change in speed. So we would set up the problem like this. Final velocity is 30 meters per second minus 0 meters per second, his initial velocity, dividing it by his time. Well, then this math is pretty easy because 30 minus 0 is going to give me 30 meters per second, still dividing it by the time, and the answer that I get is 10 meters per second per second. That's because this unit doesn't actually go anywhere. I have meters per second in over how much time it took him to make that change. Here's exactly what that means. It means that Henry will accelerate at a rate of 10 meters per second every second that he falls, which means that if Henry only falls for 1 second, he's going to reach a speed of 10 meters per second. But he will increase that speed every second that he falls. So if he falls for 2 seconds, then he will reach a speed of 20 meters per second because he's increasing his speed by 20 meters per second every second. So if he falls for 3 seconds, he will increase his speed by 10 meters per second again. If he falls for 4 seconds, he's going to increase his speed by 10 meters per second. You guessed it, he's going to reach a speed of 40 meters per second. If he falls for 6 seconds at this same rate, that means that if he falls for a total of 6 seconds, he will reach a speed of 60 meters per second. Acceleration rate tells us how fast something is going in how much time it takes them to, in the amount of time that they're traveling. When you go to your homework then, I want you to read these instructions carefully because you're going to read the information and highlight important things and apply the knowledge from the video and the reading to these 4 problems.